I ask you, what can you say? I'd like to call to order the Rutherford County School System April 2nd, 2024 work session. We have the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Mr. Young.
Yes, I would like to ask Mr. Bone to lead us in our pledge tonight.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Refer you to the agenda. Number 4. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments they need to make about the agenda? There are none. We will move to number 5. On March 20th, I announced that we would begin contract negotiations for a renewal extension of Dr. Sullivan's contract. I would like for Mr. Reed to come to the podium and explain how this process works. I will then open the floor for discussion, questions, or comments. Mr. Reed.
Board members, after, as you're aware, as the chairman stated, we entered into negotiations with Dr. Sullivan for a renewal of his existing contract. As you may remember, the contract we had with Dr. Sullivan was a 4-year contract. It was actually signed almost 2 years ago. It was signed May 27th, 2022. So we're about halfway midterm through the term of that contract right now. Also, as you're probably aware, under state law, there's a blackout period where you cannot renew contracts within a certain period of the general election. So that period runs from 45 days prior to the general election and 30 days thereafter. The general election we have this year is August 1st. So I kind of get that narrow the time we have this year to consider a renewal of the contract in the event the board was desired to do that. So the contract that you have has been presented basically before you tonight is the same contract terms that were provided for in the original contract with Dr. Sullivan. So there are no changes substantively to this contract other than the dates that were in the previous contract that the board unanimously agreed to back 2 years ago. The dates have been updated to run for a 4-year term from April 4th, 2024, so it goes through April 4th, 2028. The salary is what is provided for currently in Dr. Sullivan's current pay rate. There's no increase in his salary above what he is getting right now. The same increases that were provided for in the original contract are provided for in this contract. There's no changes to that. And to go back and kind of give you some of the history that we've had with Board of Director contracts over the last several of these that we had, Rutherford County historically has been low with respect to its director of school salaries as compared to other counties in the state of comparable size and in comparison to other states with school systems of a comparable size. So one of the things that I did go back and look at just to see where we fall with respect to our current director of school salary with respect to other counties in Tennessee, we went and pulled kind of what other counties are paying in Tennessee now for director of schools. And that's a sheet. Go to the second page here if you could on this. And there's a couple of documents here we can look at, but this is compiled on a statewide basis, and this one was compiled by TAS, which is the Superintendent's Salary, the Superintendent's Association for the state. But in a minute, we'll see the one that was compiled by TSBA, which they have the same numbers in them. But this tells you basically from a statewide standpoint, for school systems with 25,000 or more students, the average salary was $251,000 for systems that size. The median salary was $236,000 on a statewide basis. Of course, our state consists of 3 different regions. We have East, West, and Middle. If you look at the data from the Middle Tennessee counties, for school systems of 25,000 or more, the average salary base in Middle Tennessee was $256,800 some dollars there, and the median base salary is $236,000 there. So that is the data compiled across the state of Tennessee. So, and we'll go on to the TSBA data here, and here is the TSBA data from 2022 to 2023. So this is 1 year behind. So this is basically last year's data. TSBA their data is all, by the time they gather it, they're always basically 1 year behind. So this was data from last year. So it tells you kind of what the salaries were for Davidson County, which is $296,400, and they had an ADM of 76,000 students. Hamilton County was $237,000. Their ADM was 44,000 students. And these are last year's numbers, so not this year's numbers. So it's kind of a year old. Knox County is $249,600 with ADM of 58,000 students. Montgomery County, which is Clarksville, is $236,250 with an ADM of 37,957. Rutherford County last year was $215,000. You're seeing the salary that the director is currently paid a salary of $230,000. That's what is in the contract still today. So, but last year it was $215,000 with an ADM of last year in Rutherford County of $49,954. Shelby is $380,672 with an ADM of 103,000 students. Sumner is $210,000 with 30,000 students. Williamson was actually the highest of all of these at $307,000 with 41,000 students. But this is one thing that I kind of want to go back and look at, because I've gone through several director of schools contracts now, and I know historically we were far, far below the state average and what other school systems were paying. So there had been an effort on the part of the prior boards to basically get our director of school salary to a position that would be more comparable to what other school systems were paying for a similar size in the state of Tennessee, and that has happened. And our director of school salary at $230,000 really is still a little bit lower than what these numbers are, but we're closing the gap from what it previously had been, and we're getting closer to the median range of what other school systems are paying for comparable type positions. So I give you the benefit of that data. So if you wonder kind of where we fall with respect to other counties, you can have the benefit of those numbers just so you know that they're there. So this contract that you've got before you tonight does have the same salary in it that Dr. Sullivan's currently being paid that would continue for the remainder of this year. He would be due an increase in July, as was provided for in the prior contract, and the same pay increases that are in the prior contract are in this contract here. There's no material changes in that regard. So this contract is the identical contract that the board had approved previously with Dr. Sullivan, with the exception of the dates being updated. So the dates are updated to reflect a 4-year term period from April 4th, 2024 to run through April 4th, 2028. I did ask for comments from board members if they want to have provision in the contract changed or addressed. I received those. I forwarded those along anonymously to the chairman, who talked with the director and discussed all these points with the chairman. What they have agreed to, what that we would like to propose to the board is just keeping all the terms to be the same as what it was previously in the original contract, because the board did unanimously approve that previous contract when it was here 2 years ago. So that will be the contract that you'll be considering on Thursday night. And if you have any questions, let me know.
I'll now open the floor for questions or comments. Mr. Tidwell?
Hey, Jeff, could you explain the grievance process? Because I know that this, you said the board voted on this unanimously. That was a different board than what is today. So could you go over why that grievance process was changed from like the previous administration's contract?
I'm sorry, say
The
that.
grievances?
Grievances?
Yes. So there is, it's on page 7, complaints and grievances. When I was looking and comparing this to the previous director's contract, this portion got way longer than the previous contract. So I was just curious why that was added, what's the purpose of it,
There were,
what changes were made.
you're talking from Dr. Spurlock, from Mr. Spurlock's contract to
Right.
Dr. Sullivan's contract,
Right.
right? So there were, it was expanded to give opportunities to resolve issues with the director that the board certain board members may have. So if you as a board member had an issue with the director and you wanted to raise a grievance in regards to it, we wanted to provide more mechanisms to do that. So that's why this new additional language was plugged into this contract with Dr. Sullivan.
But C says it's a little bit different than that. Could you cover that for us?
Okay, C currently says, so complaints and grievances by a director involving a board member. In the event the director has a complaint or grievance involving a board member, the director may refer the complaint or grievance to the chairman of the Board of Education and board attorney to investigate and address the same. In the event the complaint or grievance is not resolved to the satisfaction of the director, the complaint or grievance may be presented to the Board of Education for such action as the Board of Education determines appropriate. If the Board of Education determines a complaint or grievance is well-founded, the board may issue a letter of determination determining the complaint or grievance to be well-founded. So this is a mechanism by which if there are grievances, and you have comparable type language up here with respect to issues with a board member and the director. So if a board member has a grievance with the director, you have a similar type process that those grievances will first be addressed to the chairman and board attorney in an effort to resolve those. If they're not resolved in a satisfactory manner, both those parties then, it will come back to the board at that point, the board to make a decision as to whether or not they want to address the grievance that's being raised. The board doesn't mean the board would do anything, but it could be addressed to the board, and you could take the board as a whole can decide what action is appropriate or should be taken with regard to the grievance. So the mechanisms here are meant to be reciprocal. So if there's a complaint a board member has with the director that they can't get resolved, there's a formal process to go through the chairman and the board attorney to try to get that resolved first. If that's not successful, then we'll come back to the board. Vice versa, if a director has an issue with a board member that cannot get resolved by the chairman and the board attorney, that issue then gets brought back to the board for your determination of whether or not you want to do anything with it at that point.
I mean, it's just basically a formal complaint. That's all it is.
Correct.
I just don't understand the purpose of it. It went in the previous director's contract, so I was seeing if I could get more clarity.
I think it's
on that, but-
meant to give more structure and more opportunity to get issues resolved that may be between a board member and a director to resolve those and bring resolution to it, I'd say.
It seems unnecessary to me. But I want to ask you, well, I got you one more second. I should have said this. I talked to Dr. Sullivan, and Dr. Sullivan, none of this I don't have an issue with Dr. Sullivan. I have an issue with the contract. So I just want to make that clear that anything that I say has no personal angst against Dr. Sullivan. I think he's doing a great job. So I want to get that out of the way. But as far as the termination, now, this is something that I reached out to you about as well, so I guess this didn't get picked up and added into negotiations. But I want to go over that real quick. So there's a couple reasons on page 8 for termination. Of course, there's disability of the director. I don't need to go into that one. Discharge for just cause, and this would be like breaking the law, habitually absent, immorality, those types of things in which he wouldn't receive his benefits after. But there is one that I do have an issue with. If what we're being told by TSBA and others that the board only has one contractor or one employee, and if the board itself, for whatever reason, decided to, as we go to E, unilateral termination by the board, decided to change the direction for whatever reason of the director, the board would have to pay out that contract. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
That is correct. So what I don't get and don't understand, and I'm, of course, coming from the private sector of means, but even still in the public sector, I don't understand what would be the incentive if there was disagreement between the board and the director, who is supposedly, we keep being told, our only employee, our only contractor. What would be the incentive for that director to work within board policy? Because if we go down to number F, which is unilateral termination by the director, which is resignation, we will see when there was an issue with the previous administration, I shouldn't say administration, previous director, and I guess the evaluations came back less than good for him. Instead of him being, even though he was technically being unilaterally terminated by the board, instead of that happening, what ended up happening was he ended up resigning, and then he got paid out for a year. So the issue that I have with this contract is that if there were to be a termination by the board, which seems only just of why we would be here, that's part of being a board member, is that we are to help select the director of schools. If there were to ever be an issue with that, then I am not going to be hamstrung by paying him out the rest of his contract. And so something to consider to the rest of the board members is that maybe we can make a change here to pay him out, or pay him or her, whoever it would be at the time, out 90 days versus the rest of the contract.
This is the contract that has been negotiated. You have a vote, up or down.
That is true, but I can make recommendations as well.
You can make a recommendation, but it can't go on this contract. This
Not
is the
go on it.
contract that's been negotiated, and we can't change it now.
We could not vote to amend this contract, is that correct, Jeff? Can we
The
not?
board as a whole votes to change the proposed contract. The board is, if you get majority vote to change some of the provisions in this contract that is being presented to you today.
Make any
tonight,
changes
You
we
can
want.
make some amendments to it if the board votes, majority people vote to do that.
And of course, we're not voting tonight, but
Correct.
points of
Thank you.
stance.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Young?
One thing that we need to think about when we start negotiating contracts and we start negotiating to end a contract, there's also the lawsuit side of things. And sometimes it's cheaper to buy them out than it is to go through the lawsuit. So that's another thing you need to think about.
Mr. Tidwell?
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you that that could be the case based on the contract. So my point would be to have it in the contract so we're not trapped there.
Anyone else? Ms. Darby?
I have a few questions. I guess my question, and I guess I'll pose this to you, Ms. Bratton, is what is the purpose of doing the extension now? I guess would be my question.
The purpose of doing the extension now is to make sure that another district does not come down and offer our good director an offer he cannot refuse. And this has been discussed before. We don't want Collierville to come in and tell him he's going to get $600,000 there. I would like to have something, and so would the director, that makes sure that he gets to stay with us for the next 4 years.
Okay, so my question then would be, what is in the contract that keeps him here? Because it's in the contract that he can resign with 30 days' notice anytime.
The contract was negotiated, as you see it, Ms. Darby, and that is the way it is negotiated.
So the contract doesn't require him to stay here if he chooses to leave.
Of course not.
Okay, so, well, when you say that we're doing the extension now to keep him, I don't know that I would agree
I
with
think
that, the
it,
way the
I think
contract
it
is
shows
written.
good faith
I
on
can
our
agree with,
part.
I can
on our
agree
part.
with that part. I can agree with that part. I have a couple things to go through. I will echo Mr. Tidwell's sentiments that I think Dr. Sullivan is doing a great job. This, for me, is not about him. It is about the contract in and of itself. We are tasked as a board with approving this contract. So for me, it would need to be a good contract. And I believe it was spoken about even at our retreat when we were discussing some other contracts, that good contracts have a lot of give and take. It's not one-sided, one way too far, one way too far another. So I also echo the sentiment after watching what happened with the previous director about the unilateral termination clause. I am not comfortable with stating that we would pay someone out that we no longer wish to have here their full contract. I think that that's unreasonable. The current contract that we're using, Mr. Reed, how long have y'all been using this contract? Do you know?
Well, it'll go back probably 5 directors or so.
So 20 years or more, maybe?
Well, it's been updated and changed over time, but the core contract's been there for several directors now.
I compared it with TSBA's sample contract, and there are some things that are not in here that I think should be in here as a responsible board that we should be looking at. One of those is, I know the state law requires that they have background checks, but there is a clause in the TSBA contract that speaks to the background check so that if something came up midterm, the board could request another background check. That's not currently in our current contract. I also have an issue. I went back and watched the board meeting y'all had when you discussed this contract. There was a lot of discussion back and forth about trying to get the director to the $250,000 mark, and it was decided by the previous board to do what I would say the 2 raises, the $5,000 plus the percentage that the district gets in order to get the position to that dollar amount. From watching that meeting, it didn't sound like the intention was to leave 2 raises in there indefinitely. I have a little bit of an issue myself with the director who is the one that proposes the percentage raise for his employees also getting that same percentage raise. I think as a board, we should look at the performance and the evaluation and decide raises annually for the director of schools based on those. I think that's a more appropriate way versus just, I'm going to give my people a raise and then I'm going to get that same amount. It seems like a conflict of interest to me. Those are some concerns that I have that I had also sent to Mr. Reed. So, some things I think that we should consider as it's part of our job to look at this stuff objectively. Again, I would love to have Dr. Sullivan here longer. I don't agree with this current contract in the way it's written. I think it needs some adjustment.
Madam Chairwoman,
Yes.
I was here when we negotiated this, and I will tell you, it's like apples and oranges right now. It was way too low. We were paying way too low. That whole phrase of we get more for less wasn't going to work anymore. And I will tell you, we have the most amazing director. And the confidence that he's asking us, that's all he's asking us, to give us the confidence that he's doing a good job and get behind this contract. And it's still too low. We're still not paying him what he deserves. He is killing himself going to all these meetings, stepping out with all these groups. He is at his schools. He is accessible. He's accessible to us. He's accessible to families. He's accessible to his personnel. We've not had that in that form in years, especially with the size that we are right now. They don't come, good directors like him don't come walking in that door every day. And we are so lucky that he's one of us and that he grew up in this town, and all he wants to do is represent this school district, and he's done a fine job doing it. So yes, the contract stays the way it is because all he wants is 2 more years. And I don't know that we'll have him in 10 because this job could literally kill somebody. It is that intense and that demanding.
Anyone else?
I'll just reiterate, it's not personal and nobody's calling into question the job Dr. Sullivan is doing.
Anyone else? All right, then we will move on to number 6. I'll give you a moment to look at the consent agenda, just to make sure you have it.
I bring up one thing on the consent agenda.
Yes, you may.
So we're in the middle of hiring season, so you guys are going to see a lot more of the nepotism type things coming through on this. The only way that I would recommend nepotism to be hired with a relative is if there was not a supervisory type role. There's one more that I would like to add to this that I will email. It was my fault that involved Laverne Lake and Las Casas Elementary and a school counselor whose daughter also works in that building. And so I will have that on the list for C, for nepotism. So that's my fault.
So, under C, you're going to...
Yep. We're just going to keep making it awkward. It is, and it is my fault. I missed it. Yes. Yeah, I'm pulling up the name real quick. I guess I could just ask.
Under C,
Let me get with,
before we move on,
okay, all right. So you haven't said anything.
under the nepotism.
I just
yes, I would like to add Amy McCann, who is currently the guidance counselor at Laverne Lake. Her daughter also teaches at Las Casas Elementary School, so there would not be supervisory roles. They're both equal, but I didn't add that to the agenda. That was my fault. And in full transparency, that is Mr. McCann's wife, so sorry. I didn't realize, so Mr. Uptain called today and said it didn't make the agenda, so sorry to Mr. Uptain as well.
Did everybody get that? Amy,
So Amy McCann, Las Casas Elementary.
going to Las Casas.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have something to add or question on the consent agenda? All right. Public comment will be Thursday night. Rutherford Proud will be
Be
Thursday.
Thursday night, and-
Thursday night.
I think several of you were on the board when Whitworth Buchanan was very much on the list of schools that were failing across the state. And so for them in 5 years to turn it around, I mean, that is, we've talked about April Sneed being our principal of the year, but it is truly phenomenal to be able to change the culture and the performance to be recognized that. So it's probably one, I know we had Buchanan Elementary about a decade ago or so that was a blue ribbon school, but usually our blue ribbon schools are our magnet schools, and Whitworth Buchanan is not. It's a traditional school, so to earn that is even more prestigious.
Amazing.
1 second. Sorry, I can't get all my stuff off here.
Mr. McCann? you
Work
ready?
section, Mr. McCann?
So Mr. McCann's here to update the board on Nova Smart Academy. That's our only charter applicant that we have for this cycle. I believe we're presenting on the 16th and 18th, correct?
That's 2 weeks from today.
Perfect.
Just a quick update, though, on where we are in the process of, as you're aware, Novus Smart Academy has applied. They're our lone applicant this year. Rocket Ship withdrew their intent just before the deadline, so we only have one. one charter to review, one charter application to review this year, and they plan to open in fall of '25 in the Smyrna-Laverne area, starting with only a kindergarten class of 88 students, and they plan to add a grade each year until they reach their full capacity of 990 students in grades K through 8 eventually. They have located a potential facility in Smyrna. It's a church right in the middle of Smyrna that they think will work for their purposes, and they're willing to partner with them. Not sure yet on the renovations they're going to have to make, but they at least have a facility in mind, which is great. If you've not had a chance to look at their application, just a couple of high points. The mission indicates that they're going to offer a rigorous curriculum, high-quality academics, fostering a love for learning, and preparing students for college and career readiness. And that's just a snippet of it. They also offer an extended school year of 195 instructional days. That's more than the 180 days that typically students go to school. They will be going to school through the month of June on an 8.5-hour school day each day, by the way. Except for Wednesdays, they're going to dismiss 2 hours early every Wednesday to allow time for teacher collaboration and professional development. So that's the schedule they're proposing. Your charter review committee, there's 12 of us, and they've been hard at work reviewing that application. So far, we've met 4 times as a full group to not only train in the process, but to review the criteria and to score the application. We've had 4 subcommittee meetings in addition to that to focus on smaller parts of that application to really drill down to what it's saying. We had our capacity interview on March the 13th, and that was when their school leader and board came here, met with us in person, and we had a long discussion where we grilled them pretty good with some questions. If you haven't seen the video to that, it is on YouTube. I'd suggest you take a look at that. That'll just give you a little bit more insight into the members that are on their board. Okay? But as a reminder, the quality authorizing standards of State Board Policy 6.111 require that we maintain, as an authorizer, high standards for all of our charter schools in exchange for the autonomy they get to really meet their targets however they see fit, for lack of a better word. But it's critical that we really maintain due diligence and make sure that student and public interest are protected. That's really our job, is to make sure the interest of the public and the children of Rutherford County are protected. And a part of that mandates a really thorough review of a submitted application with a very critical, detailed eye on all of the components. And I think our committee really has done that. They've worked super hard to really analyze and drill down in that application. So at this point, the members of the review committee have scored all sections of the application. We've discussed our findings. We've reached a consensus on areas of strength and some areas of concern. My plan is to have the full written report to you by the end of this week to give you time to review that. Ask me questions if you have them, but basically to prepare to make your decision, because I know it's not an easy one. I also encourage you to review the application itself if you've not done that. It's long. It's a pretty heavy read, but just know the committee is going to provide you with the pertinent information that you need to make the best decision for RCS. Okay, and along those lines, I will make a full presentation to you 2 weeks from today, hitting all of the strengths and all of the areas of concern. Hopefully, after that, you'll be ready to vote by the regular board meeting 2 days later. If not, your option is to call a special called meeting. It'll have to be within that next week, though, because a decision has to be made, or you have to take a vote by April the 30th. That's when our 90-day window runs out. And if you don't take a vote by then, it's automatically approved per state rules, regardless. Okay? Any questions for me on where we stand with the Novus Smart Academy application process?
Thank you. Okay. You just threw out the timeline, and that was my question. Okay, so we have till April 30th to make a decision?
Yes.
So you said it in your comments, I'm sure. When do you plan to bring that application? When is it going to be presented before the board?
2 weeks from today, I'll present at the next board work session for the public, but I will provide you a written report by the end of this week.
Okay.
We should have most of the information that you need to help make your best decision.
Perfect. I have a recommendation to make. I really appreciated last year's process with Dr. Chastain and the previous person that was in your position, where they opened it up to allow time for board members to come and have one-on-ones. so we can go through those questions. I really appreciated that time, and so I will ask that we will bring that back
Sure.
as part of the process. Because I thought it was for me personally, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I really found that very valuable and very helpful. So I request that we do that.
Absolutely. You're welcome to come see me anytime
Yeah.
between now and then. Absolutely.
But they announced
I think-
it had it like,
Okay.
yeah.
I will announce that.
Gave us.
What's your
a
week
block of
next
time.
week look like?
You are welcome to come see
Yeah.
me any day next week.
Yeah, well, yeah, they had a block of time and then we can come in.
If you email me, we'll schedule something specific if that helps.
Okay, I'll email you.
That'd be great.
Madam Chairman. And so I would just want to thank Mr. McCann and the committee. Which board
thank
member
you.
serves on? So
Maxwell.
it is a rigorous process. I know sometimes it's easy to want to go back and look at previous applicants and see what was the comparison, but it's a different review committee every time. So it's the same rubric, but it's a different committee. So you're going to see some differences on what certain people look at compared to others. So just thank you guys. From the first one to Kelly doing the second one to Dr. Bullard the third one to you doing the fourth one, it is a lot. So thank you.
Different every time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McCann, I thanked you earlier for putting it on YouTube, and I think our parents need to go out and watch that because I was very impressed with their board members. And not only that, y'all, it's almost unheard of. They had a line of credit from Pinnacle for $1 million that was interest-free.
Right?
So
Right.
somebody believes a lot in them
Yep.
to offer that.
Well, I think the committee itself did feel like that their board was very genuine, and their hearts were in the right place for sure.
Thank you for putting that on YouTube.
Absolutely. Sure.
Where are they coming to us from?
They are a New
specific-
Start charter school.
Okay.
So we will be their very first one. They have
Okay.
no other charter schools in the country, in the state. Dr. Sager himself has extensive experience in Memphis and Nashville, working in some charter schools. And he was recruited by a group called Build, Excel, Sustain, BES, which specifically trains people to open new charter schools.
Okay, so we would be number one if we voted that in.
We would be the very first one for them, yes.
Because I know Rocket Ship was in Nashville and still is in
Still
Nashville
is.
at one time.
They still are,
So,
yes, still are.
okay. Anyone else? Mr. Tidwell?
What was the name of that group you said they were recruited by?
Build, Excel, Sustain, BES. If Google them, you can find them easily.
Thank you.
I can give you some quick updates on our other two
Yes.
live charter schools if you'd like them, if you'd like me to do that real quick.
Yes, please.
Just because I'm sure some of you are wondering. First of all, Springs Empower, they do have an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club in Smyrna, if you've not heard, to use their facility as their location for the next couple of years until they can actually build their own. But they're looking at probably 2 or 3 years at least in the Boys and Girls Club. As of today, they've filled about 2/3 of their 241 offered seats.
Wow.
But they do have waiting lists in every grade except for third, and they started offering those empty seats to their wait list members today, so I do think that number will go a little bit higher. As far as American Classical Academy Rutherford, they have also secured a building, if you've not heard. They have they hope to secure a building in the Ingram Entertainment Complex in the Laverne industrial area right off of I-24, but they're waiting on rezoning from the city of Laverne to make that, before they can actually make that official. It's a very nice building, though, by the way.
it is.
I've been by there. Right now, though, in my last conversation with him, that they are at about half their projected levels for K-3 and about 1/3 for 4 through 5. He's a little bit behind in the process. They did not use our same enrollment platform like Springs did. They used their own enrollment platform, so, and I don't know how effectively they've gotten word out yet, but now that they have a facility, I expect that'll probably change. But their projections are for 340 students in year 1 in K through 5. Most schools, though, they are a little bit behind on keeping up with their pre-opening checklist that they have to do, but we're working together really hard to get caught up on that. Most of those items are not critical, and they're dependent upon other things like hiring and facility securement, things like that. But I do meet with each of these charters once every month in person, but we stay in constant contact in between there. So, and the relationships so far have been very positive. So, okay.
Yes, Dr. Sullivan?
McCann and I should know this, but being our first ones opening, when do they have to give us final enrollment type projections for budgetary purposes?
Well, they're supposed to have given us tentative ones on already, the 15th.
Okay.
So right now, we're operating under their projected enrollment, but they're going to have to nail down, and it's part of their checklist to get us final enrollment numbers.
And that's, from a budgetary standpoint, one of my big concerns is that if we budget them on proposals, then we would be giving millions
Right.
for students who may or may not show up.
May or
So
may not
that's
show up.
one of our big concerns right now.
Yes. They
And
do
we
have to
still-
provide us with exact enrollment numbers.
We talked about it with the county finance director and then at our retreat as well. We're still not quite sure how to budget for it. So as we get into our budget process, we'll look at it further.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. McCann.
Thank you so much for your job, doing hard work.
Number 10, legal.
First, we have an out-of-county transfer student. The board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. The student is remanded to alternative school for possession of an infused gummy or an edible. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers to another school system under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools' recommendation is to admit in place into alternative school. We do have the room right now.
Okay. Any questions you might have, you need to direct to Monica, and you have the information, and she's also sent that out to us, so. Number 2, central magnet HVAC problem.
Central Magnet has experienced multiple problems with the HVAC renovations that have been done over the last several years. The system that was installed is not functioning as requested. The cost to repair the system will be significant. There may be legal recourse against the engineer, contractor, and or manufacturer who worked on this system. So you guys will see in our 177 budget funds to go ahead and start addressing this, because we don't want to just wait and leave the school without what it needs, but we believe that there's some legal recourse we can get in the meantime. So you'll see the request on Thursday is to allow Mr. Reed to go ahead and move forward with some legal actions.
Questions? Comments? Okay. Number 2, financial matters.
First, we have Wilson Bank and Trust contractual agreement. So Wilson Bank and Trust contract agreement between Riverdale High School, which is really their booster club, Riverdale High School quarterback booster club, and Wilson Bank and Trust for a donation of $150,000 distributed over a 10-year period.
Questions, comments?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
For the field turf.
Yep.
It's for what?
Field turf.
Oh, it's for the turf. Oh, okay. Oh, God, that's a lot of money, okay. Number 2, certified and classified 2.5%.
So we are running into our May 15th is the date that we have to submit our budget to the county commission. During the director's update, I will go over, we got our first TISA estimate last Thursday, I believe, and we're going to go over that during director's update. But the big portion, we discussed this at our retreat, about 83% of our budget is staffing and benefits. And so to build our budget, we need an idea of where the board wants to go with raises. So our recommendation is certified and classified a 2.5% cost of living salary schedule adjustment for 24-25. Keep in mind that does not include step increases. Step increases. So in our salary schedule last year, we put into a place that every classified individual would get a 1.6% increase. And so for a year of experience. So a classified person, whether it's custodial to bookkeeper, would get that 1.6 for an extra year of experience plus a 2.5. Certified's a little bit different. Certified ranges from somewhere in the 3% based on what their year is, all the way down to 0.25, closer to the end of our scale. And really, it's kind of up to the board of where we want to go, but we need some direction so that we can build our budget.
Questions?
Mr. Bratton,
Yes, sir.
what was the number you gave for the certified again? You said 3%?
Yeah, it goes all the way from, let me pull it up while we're talking about some of this
Okay.
stuff. I know it's in the 3s, and it's all based on when the former state salary schedule had different increases based on different years. So you may have a year that increased $5,000, and it was year 5 to year 6, and so that increase was higher than everywhere else. But let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I'll have to go pull it. It's on a different file. So I thought I had an easier version. I don't.
Just curious.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sullivan, do you know, when it comes to, obviously outside of the school district, the other county government positions, are they operating on a step and percent scale as well?
Yep. And I believe, had a conversation today that I'm not allowed to talk about. It will, and it's going to be harder for our employees because usually they see if county government gets one type of raise, that they always think that I get that type of raise. I don't anticipate, unfortunately, our raise being what other parts of the county may be able to get, but we are a larger corporation and have different funding than the county as a whole does. That's about as generic as I can say it, but I can talk about it afterwards.
Gotcha.
Yep. We will have 2.5 potentially. Another entity in the county may have a different one.
And this is inclusive of the district as a whole,
Yeah,
correct?
district as a whole.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
What about the state raises?
What about them?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's been some conversation. So the TISA base, we can go ahead and get into this. So the TISA base is supposed to go from $6,860 as part of the governor's proposal, should go up to $7,075. You'll see that in our TISA estimate shows $7,075. There has been discussion last week with the House with education savings account scholarships, with the Senate and the governor's version have the base set at $7,075. The House has had some conversation about all the extra things they were throwing in for public education, that they would have to find the funding for it, and they may have to look at teacher raises for that. If something were to happen and we were to lose, that TISA base were lessened, we'd have to go back and look at ours. I'm hopeful that that is not a true thing and is just a scare tactic to try to build support. That's what it seems like, is support vouchers or we'll pull your teacher raises.
Ms. Rosales?
So, I met with Michael Hendricks yesterday, who is one of the advisors to the governor, and he's a policy, and he's very hopeful that it's going to stay at $7,075. So I cannot predict what the House is going to do or what they're going to, at the end of the day, going to try to land, but I know that they're pushing for the $7,075 base. So that's as much as I can say, because it's up to what's going to happen in the vote. So I don't know.
Thank you.
I think it was very intentional, and I appreciate the Department of Education, which I don't say a whole lot of times. But the day after that came out, we got our TISA estimate that showed $7,075. So if something were to happen that removed that amount and eliminated some of the teacher raises, it would go back on what the department sent every district in this state, showing what their salary, what their increase was going to be. So that'd be a lot of backtracking.
Okay. Number 3?
I'm lost. Let me find where number
It's all
3
right.
is. Okay. Number 3 is the COSPA convention. So last year the board went to the COSPA convention and our budget was roughly $16,600. The board didn't attend COSPA this school year. Ms. Darby would like to discuss opportunities of attending a few programs in place of COSPA. So one of them is a newcomer school, and that's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Price per person is approximately $650. The second one is the Polaris Career Center in Middleburg Heights, Ohio, 5/14 through 5/15. That price is approximately $500. I see that we didn't put Middleburg Heights, Ohio on April 8th during the middle of the eclipse. That would have been a nice timing to do that too, because I think they're in full totality. So,
Questions?
Ms. Bratton?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to know who requested to add this to the agenda and who approved it?
Well, it says right here, I asked for it to be put on here.
Okay.
For discussion. I mean, nothing has been approved. The dates were just dates that I pulled before the end of the school year.
Sure.
I believe Ms. Maxwell is the one that had identified the newcomer school. Polaris Career Center was one that I saw, I believe it was in Tampa, and they're a CTE, like a self-sufficient, fully CTE center.
Okay. Oh, but who approved to add it to the agenda? If a school board member requested it, so who approved the item from a school board member to be added to the agenda? Who approved that?
I'm confused because
You're confused?
any
So any,
You guys can
oh,
always
so
have.
any board member can add anything to the agenda without
That's
approval?
correct.
Oh,
By
okay.
policy.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know that.
That's correct.
Any board member can add it to the policy without any approval from the superintendent or even from the chair, so.
That is
That's
correct.
part of the policy?
That is part of the
Okay,
policy.
thank you. I
Yes.
just didn't know how it got there.
That's fine.
Thank you.
You mean you haven't memorized that whole policy
No, I
manual?
don't know anything. I was
What-
just
what
trying-
you-
I was just looking at this and
Wow.
trying to understand how this got added to the agenda.
Well.
And so I mean, that's great if we're wanting to look at other options, but I was just curious and to know that.
Good question.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? All right. How about, and here we go, folks,
Oh, boy.
12.
All right.
Naming
so
of the new schools.
Naming of new schools. Ms. Sharp, you want to take that one?
Oh, boy. We had a committee of about 4 of us that were put together, and we met, and Commissioner Laura Davison submitted Mr. Simon's name, Bob Simon. He was a great fixture in Laverne and worked a lot with our students in Box 100, and he still remembered very, very fondly, and he wanted to build a community center in Laverne. So that didn't happen, but his name was submitted, and we all agreed to it, and we're going to do the fox as the mascot, and we're going to do metallic silver with burnt orange, and this is for the Laverne Primary building, not the Roy Annex building. There used to be Laverne Primary where my son went to school. And so the new name is Simon Springs Community School, because it's not going to be, we have more plans for that coming up in the future. It's not going to be just an alternative school. It's going to be somewhat of a community area for other people in the neighborhood to use, like the basketball court, stuff like that, because they're not going to have their own basketball team. So
I like that addition of that word community. I think that, I don't know, that just kind of draws you in. I like it. All right. Our next one.
Next one, I believe, Ms. Maxwell, I think this was yours.
Yes. We had also 4 or 5 people on our committee, and it came down to, there were 2 really good candidates. And one of our people, so somebody was going to lose, and then she said, well, Daniel McKee is 2 people. And I was like, you're right. Why can't it be Westbrook's Woods? So Westbrook Woods Academy is going to be named after Hollis Westbrooks, who was a really nice man, a very well-respected. Westbrook Towers is named after him. He's responsible for Cannonsburg, and there was like a general store down there that was from his area. He grew up kind of out in the Rockville, Link area out there. He was also a mayor for many, many years, and I did not know this when we chose Mr. Westbrooks, because I really admired him growing up. He was the first mayor that I remember. He also was school board chair. Did not know that. From 1942 to 1956, so nice little education thing there. And Olivia Woods was the first African-American graduate of what was called then Middle Tennessee Teachers College. And she had a over 30-year teaching career in the city schools, but because of the location of the school being right there on Church Street, kind of in the heart of Murfreesboro, I thought that it needed to be some Murfreesboro people. So both of these names are just wonderful people, and I really like the way it says Westbrook Woods. And we also did not like the name Alternative, so we put on Academy. I think that sounds so much better. And we went with Admirals as something to aspire to, and the colors of MTSU, blue and white. So
not orange. No orange.
All the way.
no, we did not go with
No
orange and white.
I'm going to make a motion to change the colors to orange and white.
Oh, you're bad. You're so bad. And am I correct that this was Collier Woods Y? Mm-hmm. Okay. Collier Woods was also an educator here in Rutherford County and was an assistant principal at Central High School. So we've hit 2 educators. I just I think that showed a lot of thought.
Win-win.
I think it's a win. I think all of these are a win-win. I really like them. Okay.
Mrs. Darby, I think it's yours.
Darby?
We too had 4 or 5 people on our committee. Ours went pretty quick, pretty smooth. Everybody was on board. Mr. Beatty did not want to include his name in any way, shape, or form. But we got to hear some really cool stories about his family that has been here a very long time and his property. And there were poplar trees at the top of the hill, and he said everyone called it Poplar Hill, and so everybody thought that was a really great name for an elementary school. So we are Poplar Hill Elementary School, and we settled on coyotes for the mascot, and hunter green, white, and a metallic gold accent are our colors.
I like that you put the hunter green with the exact color, because if you don't, y'all, my gosh, there's about 1 billion hunter greens or anything, so that was a smart thing to do.
Well, there was a lot of discussion about how those can get kind of like brown and muddy, or they can get, so we looked at those and tried to decide on one before we adjourned that day.
You made sure that it was hunter green. I like that. Anyone have any questions or comments? Scott Broden called me and left a message this afternoon, and I didn't get it, and I had to come here for a meeting, but he was going to do a story about naming of the school. He's actually called me more than once about naming, but I told him he had to wait. He could find out when everybody else did. And he, Scott's so nice. He said, well, that'd be just fine. So I told him when we were going to announce it. So he's probably going to do a story on this. And he may be talking to some of you,
Madam Chairman, yeah, he called me this
Oh,
afternoon.
did he? Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely doing a story.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Because it's kind of a big deal. It really is. Naming new schools is a big deal. It lasts forever. Which reminds me that I appeared, and some of you have seen my video for Walter Hill. Walter Hill is 100 years old, and my mother went to Walter Hill in 1st through 12th grade, as well as my aunt and my uncle, and they are interviewing us, people who had anything to do with Walter Hill, including him, I think.
Tomorrow. I think I'm tomorrow.
Oh, he's tomorrow. And they're interviewing us about memories of Walter Hill. Of course, I didn't have any current memories, but my mother was DAR at Walter Hill, and my aunt was DAR at Walter Hill, and my mother played basketball. She was 5'2". She was a little spitfire, but my mother had such fond memories of Walter Hill. So they're going to be putting these videos out to advertise in the 100 years is in August the 10th. August the 10th, I think is right, but we will check. And they're going to have a huge celebration, food trucks, the whole bit. So Laura Weaver, yes, Katie, I did teach her, is doing a fantastic job getting this together. So I'll be watching for Walter Hill announcements and videos.
Laura who?
Weaver.
Heath?
She's
Is that her
Laura
maiden
Heath.
name? Okay.
Laura Weaver's her
It's like, do we have a new principal?
Right, Laura Weaver is her maiden name.
Okay, that
So
helps.
sorry, she's Laura Heath.
I was like, who are we talking about? Okay. Now
I'm
I've got
sorry that you don't know all my
it. No, I
students.
don't.
Insurance.
Trinity, you got anything?
No updates at this time.
Financial report?
All right, so we've got a little bit. One, Mr. Tidwell, just so the biggest increase is 3.5% from year 5 to 6. And that matches when teachers used to get their tenure. And so they would get a raise after that. And the smallest one is the end of the scale for year 25, and it's 0.25. All right, so we've got several things to go over financial, so let's look at the ones that you guys are used to seeing first. So this will be our March report for our summary financial, so it's just the one page, it's front and back this time. So it should be behind the stapled version of the big long one we're used to looking at.
Thank you, thank you.
Looks like this one, the one we normally look at, the staple of the other one. So we're going to look at page 1 of 2 revenue. So just to show you a little bit, property tax actually came in above where we were expecting, so that's good because we are pretty much finished with property tax collection. So it came in about 2 million or about 1.5 million over, or 2% over. The other ones that are still trending, so sales tax runs 1 month behind, and so it is still coming in about 8.4, which is less than it was last year, but still trending to meet what we need it to. You will see TISA all the way down, and we talk about this one a lot, 46,510. You'll see that it is showing 82%, even though we have several months left. That's because we don't get a payment in May. Is that correct? Yep. We don't get a payment in May, so you increase more of what you have right now. If you flip over, this just gives you an idea of where we are running with our entire budget. You'll see with all of these different ones, we'll have a cleanup amendment coming towards the end of May, middle of June, depending on when we get summer school funding and when the General Assembly passes their budget to give us summer school funding, all those different types of things. You'll see a huge difference right now if you look at 99-100, so I want to call that out. You'll see that it says operating transfers, and it makes it look like our revenues at the very top of that page are 541 million, but we're spending 576. That's because of the money that we have transferred out for Beatty Elementary project. So just wanted to call that portion out. That's what that 99-100 is, all the money we have given back to the county this year, which is quite a bit. So we talk about the 30 million a lot. We have not talked as much over the 2 million that we did at multiple different times. So we've really given back 34.8 million this year. So something to celebrate, but also be cautious about that we're giving that much back.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yep.
I have a question, and you may have said something, and I just totally missed it. Okay, so back on the other page, 141, on the local taxes, it's running at 69%. Is that fairly normal?
It is for this time of the year, yes.
So it
Because
is?
this is still probably only pulling February sales tax, wouldn't you? Yeah, it wouldn't have pulled March because it's always a month behind.
Okay.
So we would still have March, April, May, June. We'd still have 4 months. So it's
1 month
actually,
left, okay.
it's running about 3% over for the year.
Okay. We need people to buy.
Buy local.
Buy local.
Then you have a copy of the large one that we're used to looking at. This just has an additional payroll on it. Pretty much everything we'll have to, because of additional ESL positions and hard-to-staff bonuses, we'll add some of our, so we don't have the same issue as last year, we'll add some of our fast growth and TISA outcome funding to these lines to make sure that we don't go over in any of them, and to also make sure we cover the summer school funding. But outside of that, pretty much everything's running in line to, I think as of yesterday, we have 30, well, yesterday we had 40, I guess now we have 39 school days left. So we are very much running in the focused on this year finishing out, but our district staff is very much in line with running on next year. So that just scared some of y'all over there. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Now let's talk about this upcoming budget. So that's this year. You guys have a couple documents, and it starts off being highlighted. It says 24-25 prelim TISA, and then it has number 1 at the top. So there's a couple things that I highlighted out here. One, we got this March 28th, and so Hartford districts, we're lucky. Our private act says that we don't have to turn this in until May 15th. Some districts have it on April 30th, and so they get 32 days to be able to turn a budget around. You'll see this just includes base, weight, and direct funding, just like last year. So we don't have outcome funding, and we don't budget outcome funding that gives us extra revenue. And it's averaged over the first 6 reporting periods. And so it is an average. We still have several reporting periods, which are every 20 days to go through. One of the big ones that you're going to see, and I'm going to note the discrepancy, we talked a little bit about it at the retreat, is economically disadvantaged funding. And then I've got a second part that's highlighted that says some districts are showing higher than anticipated economically disadvantaged ADM due to miscoding of Medicaid students. It wasn't a miscoding. That was what the State Department told us to do at the very beginning of the year. And so we didn't have them coded that way. They asked us to go back and code them as economically disadvantaged, so we did. We had an additional 5,000 students, which would have attributed to probably a little bit over $10 million. It would have cost the state millions upon millions statewide. So in February, they went back and said, go back and code them not as economically disadvantaged. And so,
Dr. Sullivan?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, this is really frustrating because this was definitely a directive from the Department of Education for us to do that. And the letter sends that we're miscoding it and we got to redo it back. So revert to it was before. So with that question is, where are we trending now with the bad meal debt?
over 500 and, was it 590? That sound right?
590,
We're still in that 600-700 range.
Yeah,
600?
we're at 590 right before spring break. I'll have an official number of where we are for Thursday.
Okay. What is that going to do now with changing the 5,000 that we increased?
Nothing, because they still qualify, we don't get credit for them.
Oh, they're going to, oh, we're not going to get them from.
We don't get credit for TISA for them, but they
For
still get
TISA
them.
form, but we will get them for the USDA
Yeah.
reimbursement. Oh, okay, well, that's good to know. That's a good clarification. Okay, good.
So if you will look on page 3, there's a couple things that I want to point out to you. So you will see I've got economically disadvantaged. One, there's a couple. Second, look at base. You'll see the base amount is $7,075. So that is the full governor's amount, including teacher raises, that is being proposed. Then below it, you will see student economically disadvantaged. We are showing $8,300 at $14 million. If you'll go to your second document that's got 24, 25 TISA base and economically disadvantaged, and it's got number 2 beside it, I just want to show you the difference of what we were given on February 28th, and that's the date of this one, to March 28th. February 28th, you'll see that they had us at 13,080 economically disadvantaged students. And so truly, just in a coding, we lost 4,500 kids, which would have, again, accounted for about $10 million. So pretty frustrating. But the other parts that I want to highlight on that is if you notice at the bottom of the page, it says total $455 million. We do not get $455 million from the state. It is a 70-30 split statewide. So 70% state, 30% local. This is just showing you how much we would earn if the state did all 100%. Our ESL and special ed team need to truly be commended, and Dr. Chastain's staff, because these ULNs have a lot of ESL identifiers in them, and TN Pulse was the new program that the state has to upload all information, and they had to go and input everything by hand. And when you're looking at numbers of 3,000, 2,000 kids, I mean, that is a fortune that they were able to make sure we were getting credit for. And then if you will flip to the last page, this is the part that we build our budget from. So this is a calculation of statewide data showing you the 70-30 split. So you'll see that statewide 30, then they have on number 2 something called fiscal capacity, which is our ability to pay basically. And we're at 5.2%. The higher your number, the more that you're able to pay. And so we're actually somewhere between that 74% state and then the other part local. And so you'll see going down to number 3, when it comes to total students, we're at 84.9% of students. So we've gone up a little bit compared to what we normally have. We're usually at about 84.6, so we gained 0.3% of the students in the county this last year. So we're trending to take more of the share of students across the entire county. But the big ones I wanted to hit on is that bottom number is what the county has to fund, $190,656,000. So that is what our maintenance of effort number is. Regardless, that'll be the minimum the county has to fund, is $190,656. We're going to ask again for the growth of the penny if there is much. We talked about the retreat, there may not be much, but at least a couple $100,000 to be able to go a little bit above maintenance of effort. And then what we're getting from the state is $342 million. And so that is what we will get from the states. We do need to give credit for TISA because for TISA, we were sitting in the 270s. And so I do appreciate our legislative delegation doing that, 270,000 to 342. Now, granted, we've added 3,000 kids since that time, but it is a huge increase. And then the last document you have, one of the last two, it says final TISA allocation for current school year, July 7th, 2023. So I highlighted that on purpose. we don't get our final TISA allocations until our budget is already passed by the county commission. And so that is normal. It's the way it's always operated under BEP, but it is good just to know that we always have to go back and amend because we truly don't know what the numbers are. And to show you what we got last year, the very last page, last year we earned from the state 323. This year, right now, we're showing 342. So it's about a 19 million increase. That will cover our potential COLA increases and probably 100,000 ESL teaching positions that we need to add. Not really 100,000, but our growth teaching positions. So overall doing good. And then the last page you have, you probably don't care very much about, but it just shows our fiscal capacity. And then it's an alphabetical order of the 95 counties showing you what our fiscal capacity of being 5%. And you'll see the more districts that can bring in more funds have a higher fiscal capacity. So you've got Metro Nashville, Davidson County at 17%, and then you have Shelby County at 12, Williamson at 6, and basically that means that our county has to pick up more than the state average of 70. So I misspoke earlier. The state picks up about 65%, and we pick up 35. So it's not the opposite.
Director Sullivan?
Yes.
Real quick, I know you said that we would have the funding for the ESL.
Yep.
But are we going to be able to find the staffing for the
Yeah, we're
ESL?
doing pretty good with the
Okay.
ESL staff. We're not, I don't want to jinx it, but yeah, we're
Okay, good.
doing good.
Okay.
If I jinxed it, that's bad, but I mean, we've done really well with our being able to staff our positions comparatively. Sorry, I know that was a long director's or financial report, but you guys need to see where our funding was coming in. What's next?
Director's
Oh.
update.
Real quick, library books. It's in your communication report today, so we've had questions about library books. I envision a news station being here on Thursday to discuss kind of what our process is, so I'll do that during director's update. State testing is quickly approaching with TCAP, so we're winding into that season very, very, very quickly. And then Every Kid is a Hero Day is Wednesday, April 10th from 10 to 1 at Stewart's Creek? Stewart's Creek High School, and if we have rain that day, it'll move to the next day, same time. So 10 to 1.
We also have the special education prom this
That
Friday.
is correct, and it is amazing.
It's always one of those events that you just can't
Yep.
not enjoy. It's a great event.
Is it the Smyrna Town Center?
Yes.
The Smyrna Town Center, our special education prom is an amazing event to go to. If you,
That is
yeah.
the best.
It is awesome.
Is that
Friday.
Friday.
If you ever get a chance, that is the best. Oh,
It is
If
awesome.
you're having a bad day, just go to
It'll make your day better.
that day anymore.
That's all I got.
Okay. And our Tennessee legislative update,
I'm going to wait Thursday because something exciting is going to be happening Thursday, and I want to wait till it happens on Thursday to come back to report about it.
that'll
So,
be just fine. General discussion.
Madam Chairwoman, I wanted to take a moment. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I think I would take the opportunity to do this to everyone who's listening. In 2013, I lost a son, and we started a scholarship almost immediately due to the generosity of our friends and family who wanted to do something. And so we had this scholarship, Mitchell Maxwell Scholarship, established at Riverdale High School. Well, it being 10 years from that date, we decided and came to the board, my husband came, and we decided to do one at all the high schools. And I'm just putting the word out that I've only heard from Riverdale, Rockvale, and Blackman. It's a $1,000 scholarship for the freshman year of a school. And the only criteria is that you need to have a minimum GPA of 2.6 and desire to play a sport in college, but you're not receiving an athletic scholarship. And it would be helpful if you also have a desire to either teach or coach. So I'm just putting this out to everyone, to the Oaklands, to the Stewart's Creeks, to the Smyrnas. I want to hear from you. So,
Good. Anyone else? That it?
Move to adjourn?
Thank you.
second.
Thank you. We are adjourned.